Hey there, welcome to Pop Culture Cupid.
I'm Alison, love coach, here to help you single people find your way back to love.
And I'm Michal, I'm a single life coach. I help singles embrace themselves and their singleness, as well as develop a healthy self-relationship.
In this podcast, we will look at how pop culture impacts romance, dating, and your love life.
And each week we'll shoot another arrow through another pop culture delusion.
I thought we weren't going to do the whole cheesy thing.
And then burst into smithereens.
Oh my god, dude, that's so cringe!
Sorry, it's in the intro now.
If you make it through the chaos and you enjoy what you hear, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and go to all the social media.
At Pop Culture Cupid on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Enjoy!
Recording in progress. It's been so long. Hello.
So we're recording today because you said that there was a holiday in Israel this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Jewish holiday, so it's not just in Israel, but we have Passover, Pesach. Yeah, not that it says much, but yeah. So it's one of like the main ones, the big ones, and
yeah. So traditionally Jewish countries will observe that holiday.
Yeah, so it's a nice one. We're also going away on Friday, so I mean, it's like a whole week. It's like tomorrow the holiday evening, like Christmas Eve kind of thing, and then the next day is like Christmas Day,
right?
And then we have a whole week of just regular days, but like it's usually vacation, and there's just people, I don't know how to even explain it. And then there's the second day holiday, which it's just doing the same thing again, just
so Boxing Day,
why not, kind of thing. Yeah, it's just we have, I don't know, fun times indeed, just a good excuse to spend time with family.
Or always a good excuse to spend time with family. Okay, so happy Passover.
Thank you very much.
Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because we decided to record 2 episodes again this week, because that's just the way we roll.
Yeah, once you're on a roll, once you get the camera going, you may as well just continue.
Yeah, do a couple and things, and I got everybody out of the house this morning so that we could have some time. Yay. So we kind of teased a lot about, well, I don't know about teasing, but we both, when we started this podcast, we were both single.
Were we? We didn't start it that long ago. I think when we started collaborating, we were both single.
Yeah, well, I was finishing a relationship that we can talk about.
That's right. Yeah. You were
finishing.
Like, we started this podcast just a few months ago, didn't we? I feel like it was just a few months, so maybe it's like longer, but
I don't know. Well, we can
look it up, I guess.
Yeah, we can look it up. Well, anyway, and so all this to say that we dating and single life coach in their 30s. We talked about first dates and early relationships and our current relationships, but we didn't really talk about how we became single, like the most recent becoming single events. And
yeah, we had I think we had one episode about breakups, so we spoke about like,
yes, but what I mean is like our most recent breakup and why what led to our most recent breakup and kind of like thought process and things like that.
I think the last breakup I told about was my most recent breakup, but I can tell about another one.
I definitely didn't talk about my most recent breakup because
you were still in it when we started like collaborating.
Yeah, so yeah, because I think one of the breakup, I've had 3 or 4 real big relationships, and I talked about different types of breakups, but my most recent one I didn't talk about. I think it's because we kind of not still in the middle of it when we had the episode, but it just didn't feel right. So let's talk about it now.
Yeah, we
So
should.
So me coming on this journey to become a love coach started in 2020, to be completely unoriginal, thinking about
Same.
life and things, and so at that time I was an estate agent, and I was just reflecting on life and listening to podcasts, and got I was already kind of into self-development, but it got super powered at that time, as for many people, I'm sure. And I was like, okay, so what am I good at? And I was talking, thinking about all of these things and there's a point to how I got into this relationship. There's a point to it. What am I good at, and what do I want to do with my life? I want to do something that's going to help people. And so I've always been very good about talking about relationships and sex and things like that. So it started off with becoming a sex therapist, and then just evolved and mutated into becoming a love coach. And so I trained for it and everything. And I had been single for a while, and was, and still single when I started my training to become a love coach. And during my training, I met this guy that I kind of thought was everything I was looking for in a guy. And I always scared these guys off. He was shy, artistic type of guy, extremely soft spoken, and I'm going to try and not be a horrible bitch about him, because he hasn't only got flaws, he has got some qualities. But this guy, was always the type of guy I would have crushes on, but because I had a big personality, I would scare these guys away. And so with my training and things like that, I kind of had the tools to just adapt to him. And so I adapted to him, and we got into a relationship. And so I was very happy about it, because oh my god, this guy is all everything everything I always liked about a guy. Did you watch the Fantastic Beasts series?
Mm-hmm. I watched up until they got rid of Johnny Depp, and then I was like, no.
Yeah, so he is a lot like a Newt Scamander, in his kind of attitude, a lot that type of
awkward
shy,
kind of
awkward. And there was a guy in what was a police show, I can't remember, okay, whatever. Anyway, that type of character of just awkward but very nice and attractive and things. And it just was my type of guy that I'd never been on a date with. And so at that point we go on a date and start a relationship, and the relationship is doomed from the beginning, because Newt Scamander is a fictional character. He everything that came with his awkwardness translated into the relationship. He was unclear about what he wanted. He wasn't forthcoming.
Yeah.
He was such a big pushover. He was so much about it. But because I had done this training and got my qualifications and had started helping people, I got in this thing where, exactly as I was saying in previous episodes, I was just I didn't want to give up on him, because I was and I wasn't there for myself, of saying this guy is not for you, and you can probably do everything right in keeping this relationship, but it's not going to be good for you. And that's a huge learning, and it took me a few months to figure this out and accept the fact that, as a love coach, if my relationship was going to end, I wasn't a failure. I would an early love coach and things like that. But he was at some point I realized he had a problem with alcohol, and he got into a fight because of being drunk and unreliable. And one day we were together, he was so drunk that he just forgot that I was there and just walked off. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Well, they do say that it's the quiet ones you should look out for the most.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And so I was just unhappy in our relationship, and I couldn't see a future with him. And but I had this thing of, I had managed to convince myself that I didn't need to be ecstatically happy to be with someone, that I wasn't, this wasn't a compromise. This was me lowering my standards and hopes and dreams. But I kind of gotten into this narrative of, I don't need to invent myself this happy ever after. So this is how I was in a very bad relationship, which led to me becoming pregnant. And so one day I realize I'm late, and I'm like, oh Jesus, and I was just refusing to believe that that this is what that was.
Because you never think it's gonna happen to you, it's always like a kind of possibility, but what are the odds?
Exactly. And I was, and I had an IUD, which was, for me it was completely impossible and not fun at all. And so so I was late, and I told myself, I've been late before, and and sometimes I'm a week late and it doesn't matter. And so I waited and waited, and then until the one day I was 10 days late, and I thought, okay, I can't, I need to take a test, and it was positive. And at that point I knew that I couldn't have a baby with this man who had a problem with alcohol, who was a pushover, who was unreliable, who was all the negative things. He was he was kind sometimes, but he lacked so much self-esteem and was just so, anyway, and nothing that you want in a partner, that I knew that I couldn't keep the baby. And so I knew, so this was in October of 2022, and I knew what was coming. Like I knew, like, this was, this had to happen this way, because we can talk, people are this is gonna spark a debate about abortion, pro or against, and things like that, and what do we think, and is it murder, and things like that. But what would, I was in a bad financial state, bad emotional situation, everything, and I couldn't keep it.
It's even crueler to bring a child into an already difficult world, and even more so when you are not in a place where you can provide it all that it needs. I feel like if less people brought more kids into life in such terrible circumstances, there'd be less kids without homes, without love, who end up doing drugs or ending up in bad places and mobs or whatever. And it's just, it's sad, it's hard, and to each their own. But if more people were cautious of the children they brought into the world, then maybe there would be better circumstances for everyone.
I agree. And that was my thought process of, what am I, what do I want from, life and this and everything. And so, and I knew that it wasn't, I just couldn't. And it was, and there is, something about hormones when you're pregnant, and the thought process and the guilt and everything, and it was just so difficult.
It's traumatizing. I mean, I've never been through an abortion, but it's not only putting your body through something so stressful, it's also facing a huge, I don't know if to call it a moral dilemma, but it's like it's like this huge life choice that you have to make now or never, or live with the consequences. And it's a burden. But on the other hand, you can break up with a person and never see them again. But when a child is involved, you'll have to see them, and the child will probably suffer from the strain between you two. And it's just like the whole thing is causing something that can be avoided to begin with.
Yeah, I completely I mean, obviously completely agree with that. And and it is a moral dilemma, because especially as I want children, I want to have a family and things, and it was a huge moral dilemma. But for all of the reasons, I was just like, I could not go through with it. I knew what was coming. I knew, it was going to lead to a whole bunch of stuff. And so, our relationship was a long distance one at that time, and so I knew I was going to go up to see him for a couple of weeks, like at that time. Basically, I went up for a week or two every month or so, and so I go there, I tell him what's going on, that I want to, you know, I'm going to have an abortion, which he was, you know, supportive of and, you know, agreed with and relieved about. And from there, I was the one supporting him. He wasn't the one supporting me in this whole thing. And not in a, you know, not in a, he needed to be reassured, but he was just not there for me at all. He had panic attacks. He was just weak. He was just weak. And I mean, I'm sorry, and it's harsh. And, you know, you want to, you know, be understanding and things, but here, this is my story, and he was just not there for me at all. He was just so bad. So I got the abortion. So he was at the hospital with me when I got the abortion. And he was just unsupportive. He could not hide his emotions, which is, you know, that was the way he is. And it's not that I'm defending him. It's just, you know, some people are like that, but that was me. I had already realized, but being, you know, confronted about the fact, this is the guy that you fought for. And the thing is that I wasn't even surprised about it, that he was just not emotionally and mentally equipped to help me through this. He just wasn't. And not that it was my own fault for staying with this guy, but it's, you know, this was everything that I had seen about him. Just that was, you know, it amounted to that.
Yeah.
And so
and
it
I think you
happened.
also had to go. Yeah.
No, please go.
No. I was gonna say, I think you also needed to go. I think you needed to go out with a person like this to scratch that itch and understand that that's not the type of person that you need to be with. And often we don't know what we think we know what we need when we actually need the opposite,
Yeah.
or we think we know what we want and we actually need something else entirely. So
yeah, absolutely. That's so true, because, you know, it turns out that you want somebody you want to rely on, and you want, I don't know about the traditionally masculine type of man, even though that's what JT is today. Maybe I, you know, overcorrected, but you know, you fantasize about this image of somebody, and, you know, and especially I think our generation, you get a lot of these, you know, feminine men in touch with their emotions, which is fantastic, and you want men in touch with their emotions, but you want, whether it's men or women, you want somebody who is solid and you can count on. And it doesn't matter if you're not somebody that somebody can count on. You know, you're not a bad person, because he was not a bad person. He isn't a bad person. Well, the story isn't finished, but he was just not reliable or strong, or, you know, he wasn't anywhere near somebody you could rely upon. And so the result of that is just, you cannot be in a relationship, you know, because a relationship is on both sides. And so
no matter how strong you are, you also need someone to lean on, you know.
Exactly.
It has to go both ways at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I think, and that's the thing, that I, at that time where I was like, that experience taught me that I'm not you know, 100% strong and kind of above all, which I thought that I was at that time. I thought that I was, you know, this powerful woman of just, I don't need anyone and things like that. And I did need people, and so thankfully I had people in my life that I could count on and, you know, talk about these things with. Shout out to Kirsty, who's an amazing person, and a couple of other people. But yeah, it's, you know, you also, you know, sometimes you will feel less powerful, and you'll need people to rely on. And, you know, and if the people, you know, and you just want to find somebody who you can rely on and is going to, you know, not pull you out, because that's not, you know, it's not their job to a certain extent, but at least to be there for you, which he was not, to such an extent that somebody at my door. Nope. He was not there for me to an extent where I got the abortion, and a couple of days later, so, you know, it's an operation, and then you've got the hormones and you've got the whole emotional turmoil and everything. It takes a while to get over, you know. And for him, a couple of days later, he was basically asking me to leave because he wanted to go spend time with his friend who he had gotten into a physical fight with a couple of months prior, which led to him having like a bloody nose and a bloody like eye. And I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, anytime we bring her up, I feel like you get angry. And I was like, well, I get angry because I can't believe you forgive somebody who's barely apologized about beating you up under the influence of alcohol, and it's done it before and it's probably going to do it again. I don't understand how in your mid-30s you can still be around people like that. And he's like, yeah, but I want to spend time with her, and like, you're here and I'm not sure how to deal with it, and I just need to have my space. I was like, okay. And that was the end of that. And I was like, okay, I mean, obviously, and I've just condensed this huge argument in a couple of minutes for the sake of this podcast, but that's how it led to it, of just, okay, well, I mean, he was asking for a break, and he was like, this was, late October, early November or something like that. And he was just, saying, you're always saying that we need to put our needs in front of others. And I was like, I understand that, but you and I did this together. Like, I'm the only one paying for the consequence of our actions, and it's not even my fault. It's just the IUD moved and it wasn't effective anymore. And like, you are without any consequence on your body of what happened, and you can't even be there for me for like a week. And this was like 2 days after the abortion. He was telling me this, which, so was it not even a smack in my face, because as I said, it was completely unsurprising about this guy. When I found out I was pregnant, I knew this was going to lead to an abortion and then a breakup. I just didn't think it was going to happen like within a week of each other. And that's what led to my most recent breakup, this whole event. And so, you could say, vulgarly, you could say I had an abortion which led to a breakup, but that's not why we broke up. It was the cherry on top of just everything else, of him being weak and unreliable and just wimp like. And
well, at least it brought out his true colors, or it showed you what he's really like when push comes to shove. I think there's nothing quite like these kind of scares to show you who the person you're with is. And I mean, it's a traumatic and terrible experience, but it's also a challenge that life throws your way, and together you discover whether or not you're strong enough to get through it together or not. And it shows you who the other person really is. And if he can't cope with this, then he won't be able to cope with much bigger things and more stressful situations. And it's at least you got him out of the way.
I mean, completely. It's it shows me, it was unsurprising, as I said, but I don't like, you can get into this whole victim blaming, as in, I could have foreseen this and blah blah blah, and maybe, and that's not the point of the conversation. It's just, if I had listened to my instincts and like not pushed myself, maybe I could have avoided that situation. But what came out of it is that he was not able to support me in something that didn't impact him at all. Body, finance, everything, like, it didn't impact him at all. So good riddance. And it was, so I left. It was a tough situation in the sense that it was a tough situation in the sense that I was leaving, and with the hormones and everything, and it was an awkward time, and I hadn't told my parents. They know now, but at the time I hadn't told my parents, and it was a complicated situation. But it was the jolt that I needed of I need to own my myself. And just because I've got all of these tools to help other people doesn't mean it's innate for me, and I still need to kind of mind myself, you know, doctors make worse patients type of thing of.
Yeah. No, it's easier to give advice than to take it for yourself.
I mean, today I've got all of this training as a coach and like therapy training and things like that, but I've got my own therapist to talk things through with, just because
Yeah.
it's, you know, when you're in it and so close up to it, it's difficult to take a step back. And
Yeah,
and yeah, so
you
that
have
was,
your blind spots, and there's certain
yeah.
things that you can't see, and that, you know, other people can reflect back to you.
So yeah, so that was my last breakup.
What a
Mm.
breakup! You've gone 4 breakups, but and I feel like you just needed to experience this thing to learn a lot for yourself. Not that you have to go through an abortion, God forbid, to learn things about life, but I think you wanted to date a certain type of person. You may have ignored certain red flags along the way, which we all do, and then something so traumatizing happens at the end of it that it's you steer away, and there's no other way but to learn from it and not to repeat it again. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And as you say, you know, it's the whole everything happens for a reason is a bit, you know, it's take it or leave it type of thing. But it was an experience, you know, it, for me, it needed to come to that for me to learn that lesson. And
yeah,
today I'm thinking, you know, I don't want people to get to that to learn the lesson, which is why, you know, it's so, you know, self-awareness. You want to just think
self-awareness.
exactly what is it that you need, because at the time with the guy, I knew I wanted
Yeah.
kids, I knew that he didn't want kids, and the whole situation. And if I had been honest with myself earlier, I probably could have avoided it. And as you said, like, you put yourself in a situation where you think you want to date this type of person, and actually it's he or she is completely wrong for you. They are completely wrong for you. And it's a shame to have to get to that situation to understand.
But I think we, as humans, most of us need to, like, even if you help someone or you give someone advice, at the end of the day, each person has to learn from themselves, and they have to get burnt to really understand it for themselves and in their own life. And yes, there's certain things that you can learn from other people. You can take an example, but you know, sometimes you just need to learn from your own experiences.
Mm,
And I think a lot of times also, like, I was with the wrong people, and and it doesn't matter what others say. You think you know best, and you don't want to hear it. It's not the truth that you want to be true, and so you just ignore it, and you have to get to that crash and burn point
mm,
in order to understand that what you're doing is wrong. And you know, as someone who's giving advice, you also don't want to be at fault in the end. It's like, I did this because of you. You told me to break up with them, and I did, and now I regret it. You have to come to that decision for yourself, and you have to learn certain things on your own. And it's just the way of life. And it reminded me a bit, parts of the story reminded me a bit of my last breakup, which I spoke about in the last episode. But like, with that relationship where I was just knew very early on that it wasn't it,
yeah.
and the more it went on, the more I realized that it definitely wasn't it. And I just convinced myself that we don't need that fairy tale love, we don't need the sparks and
Yeah.
fireworks. And so I overcorrected, because yes, on the one hand, Hollywood and fairy tales aren't true, but on the other hand, you don't need to erase that completely. And so I convinced myself to make it work. And when we started dating, I was at my prime. I was so strong and resilient and thick skinned. And he was constantly seeking out support. He, he, he had a lot of issues, an amazing issues covered from head to toe the time. And it just I've ever had by the end of the relationship, because I felt like I was bottling everything up, and my body was reacting accordingly, and I just felt like I couldn't lean on him. I felt like even if I just even a bit put a tiny bit of my weight on him, he would just crumble and fall.
Yeah.
And so I just had to learn the hard way that it just wasn't it. And, my body was telling me that it wasn't it with all the anxiety that I was having, which only intensified when I was around him. So, like, you have to go through the mud to understand and to get to know yourself better.
And it's, I have this analogy where, sparks fly, and, so the sparks cause forest fires, and they heat up very fast, and then they burn out, and it's destructive.
Yep.
You want to aim for the nice little chimney fire that you have to kind of, feed wood to, and make sure you tend to often and regularly. And that's what keeps your home cozy. So yes, the forest fire is exciting, but I mean, it's my favorite analogy. I don't know if I kind of came up with it on my own or heard of it somewhere, but it's what I say, you want to, sparks cause destruction and they're exciting, sure, but just like fireworks, they fizzle and then you can't burn them again. Whereas a chimney fire, it'll heat your house and you have to tend to it, and it's just going to it's warm and reliable, but you have to tend to it. And and it's so that, but to kind of put that towards a relationship today is, if you realize it's not for you and you can't put any weight on the other person, then you need to stop it, because you're gonna self-destruct. But also the whole sparks thing, you don't want to aim for sparks, but you want to aim for something similar to it, where you feel the heat constantly, and like, if you feed the heat, then it's going to come back to you, and that's how you want to make it work. And that's, both of us, is what we avoided. We convinced ourselves that we didn't need the sparks, which we both agree today that we don't need the sparks, but we do need the heat. And and that's where we went wrong in our last relationships, where sparks and heat are not the same thing, and heat can kind of happen slowly. But it was also something that you did very well with Zev, and that I and are still doing, therefore tend to it often. That's what JT and I are doing. We tend to it, and the beginning was nice, but it was kind of like, I unsure and shy, and today we just work on it regularly and just have tough conversations every so often, not on a regular basis, but it's been a year, somewhere around a year, less than a year and a half. We've probably had 4 or 5 kind of big conversations of like, we need to work through this, and it's just the way it is.
I think we just have a lot of like small conversations whenever we can, but we also have like, there's a lot of conversations that we have, like, I'm like, we should just like turn on the microphone and record this, because this is such a great conversation. But we have a lot of these conversations all the time that is just, it helps us it's a lot of time it's just a natural conversation, because we just enjoy talking about these things, and we're just sitting and enjoying each other's company and talking about like the topic comes up. But I feel like it also helps us avoid certain arguments in certain situations, and it just makes us feel comfortable to talk about certain things. And it sort of, in Hebrew we have a saying that that you're, must be something in English, that you're, how would I say this, that you are I'm trying to think of a way to say this, oh my god, that you're taking medications before you get hurt.
Oh, it's I have it in French, but not in English. You want to prevent before you have to heal.
Exactly, preventing like the headache, or preventing the strain, or whatever it is, like in a good way, not in a kind of like I'm abusing medication kind of way, but you're sort of talking about certain things and certain issues that may cause friction in the future, and you're sort of avoiding it to begin with, because you're already on the same page and you already know how you're talking about these things. And even it's hard to avoid arguments and fights altogether, but when they do happen, you need to also be able to talk about these things calmly and just not be accusatory and not constantly cancel the other person out and not try to win the argument or not allow your ego to control it, and just understand that you want to get out of this stronger and better together, you know, and you're not fighting each other, you're fighting for each other, with each other.
Yeah. 100%. That is completely, that's just completely right. It's kind of like signing a prenup, however, you know, unsexy and unromantic that is. You know, it's making the decisions don't need to be tough, but you don't want to be making these big decisions when you're like full of emotions and negative emotions and things like that. And so obviously when you get married, you don't want to be thinking about a divorce, but sadly you have to be realistic about these things. And you know you're not going to get your fiance's name tattooed on your arm, things like that. You know, it's just, you want to make sure of these things and have a bit of foresight. And you know, it's just exactly like, you know, you want to go to the gym before you start, you know, gaining weight and things. You want to make sure that you're keeping healthy and, you know, preventing disease. And yeah, you want just preventing rather than healing, which I'm not sure there is an English expression for it, but I see exactly what you mean, because in French it's prévenir plutôt que guérir.
Sounds so romantic.
Well, I mean, everything sounds romantic in French.
Yeah, but I think something you said there that I completely agree with. I think a lot of times you don't want to, I mean, I agree with everything you say, but like there's something specific that I want to expand it on, that we have a tendency to respond from the spur of the moment or the emotions that we feel, or like from the, we just want to react before we take the time to calm down and let our anger or emotions or whatever it is subside a bit before we respond and before we react and share. And I feel like once you do that, things look different. They're less of a big deal, and you can actually have a mature, open, and productive conversation about it, and a constructive conversation that helps you get somewhere. Because if you're only reacting out of anger or out of frustration or out of hurt or whatever it is, then you're just blowing it up. And the other person can rarely ever hear you, really understand and comprehend what you're saying when you're overly emotional about it, and they get defensive, and it just causes this whole cycle of never-ending accusations.
I mean, have I ever spoken about monkey brain on this podcast with you? Does that ring a bell?
I recall, no.
Okay, so I have come up with this concept. Well, I don't know if I've come up with it, but it's just my analogy is that there's a part of our brain that we call monkey brain. It's like it's a primitive, primal part of our brain that wants to protect us. And so this monkey brain is only focused on your survival. And so at any given time, monkey brain will observe, okay, so Alison is alive and safe-ish, but alive right now. So if she changes anything, that means danger. And so that's when monkey brain gets kind of, you know, overactive. So about, you know, changing a job, going on a date, doing a new sport, going at a new place, driving a car, like anything that kind of leaves like this seat right now becomes a risk. And so monkey brain acts up, and that's when I get messages like, this is unsafe, it's dangerous, you're not clever enough, you're not beautiful enough, you're not, you know, smart enough, you're not, everything to stop me from doing something new, because monkey brain only sees change equals danger. And so what is monkey brain is going to do is, you know, is going to try to protect you as much as possible, but he's not going to do it in a kind way. He's going to do it in a very violent, trying to freeze you way. And that's how some people become, you know, completely frozen in fear and become completely inactive, because they listen to their monkey brain too much. And so what I've come to accept is that everything that comes from me, from my body, is trying to protect me. It's just a way of just, and sometimes it's not welcome, because, then, I would have never left my parents. I would have, never, as a child, I would have never walked away from my mother to go explore what's around the corner, because monkey brain was going to stop me from doing that. And that's what you do when you go to university, and when you move away, and when you go on a date. All of these negative things that, as soon as a single person wants to start dating again, they'll get all of these toxic belief systems of, blah blah blah, that's going to stop them from trying to date, because monkey brain is a monkey and doesn't understand that life is complex. All this to say that your emotional immediate reaction is monkey brain panicking and only trying to protect you. But monkey brain is a monkey and doesn't know better, and so only reacts in fear and strongly, and wants to get you away from it, and doesn't understand that there are other ways to protect yourself, and other ways that are maybe a bit longer but more adapted to just the situation, because monkey brain is a monkey. And and sometimes, and what the way I deal with it is that I hear monkey brain and I'm like, okay, so obviously I'm uncomfortable, and I'm just going to take a step back and give it a minute and wait for all of the other emotions, all of the other, what makes us different from animals is all of these emotions and these ways of dealing with things, and just not reacting. Just, this isn't even instinct, because instinct is even better at helping you survive. This is just primal, and just this weird reaction of just this knee-jerk reaction of just chaos, and that's not the best way of handling it. And so that's why I think some people become better than others at doing things, because they have learned to tame their monkey brains, and they're it's not complete chaos in their mind. It is just, okay, I'm not feeling well, and they can have a conversation with themselves of just like, okay, I hear you, but I'm still going to do this, and I'm safe.
Yeah. So Zev and I had a situation recently that it reminds me a bit of that. And I have a very cynical British humor at times. And I think for a lot of people who aren't used to it, it can be very triggering. And it can, like, sometimes, like, because I grew up with my father's like very British, very cynical humor, and even to this day I sometimes get insulted from his jokes, even though I know it's just like, just part of his British humor. But and Zev has been dealing with it like a champ, and I've been very cautious about it because I don't want it to be like very extreme like that. But that's beside the point. And so I guess I teased him, or I laughed at something that he said the other day when he was over. And for my part, I meant no malice from it. Like, I was just like teasing him about, I think he wanted these fish slippers that we saw in a video, and he was like, oh, I have to have those. And I'm like, oh my God, you do not have to have those. Something like silly like that. And so, and he got a bit offended by it, because like he got triggered or whatever it was, but he didn't respond in the moment. And for me, I didn't see it as a big issue. I didn't even, like, late when you brought it up, I was like, I thought he was referring to like a completely different situation. But and then so he took the time to just mull it over, not bring it up right away. And he usually does this. This is something that he does with everything that triggers him, which I think is such a healthy thing to do. And so afterwards, when we went for a walk, he brought it up. And I think for him, he also managed to already calm down beforehand and realize that it was such an insignificant little thing. But also he still felt the need to bring it up and to talk about it and to just let it out, without doing it in a way that's accusatory or making a big deal out of it. And I was also in a better place to really listen to him, and not in the moment that I was like, if he would have said something in the moment, it would have come out, you did this and why are you insulting me like that? And then I would have gotten defensive. We were both calm. We were both, talking about it like very, calmly and constructively. And I understand that something I said bothered him, but I also understand that he just needs to let it out and just talk about it, and just, you know, sometimes we just need to let something out. We just release it into the air, and then it dissipates, and, you know, just, you know, certain things do need a bit more of, like, talking about, whatever. But so I think it's important to have that process with yourself. Also know yourself well enough to know when you need to have these inner conversations, and to know when you need the time to relax, and to know also the other person and understand what their baseline is and what their intentions are, and to know if they're truly being, like, mean and manipulative, or if it's just part of their human part of who they are. But also, you want to grow together and you want to understand each other's process. And I want to know that if I ever cross the line, he can come to me and tell me, because I don't want to be that person who constantly jokes at someone else's expense or crosses the line and everything. So again, it's that cycle of healthy communication, both with yourself and with the person that you're with.
Yeah, completely. And I think so, you know, with my analogy of monkey brain, what would have happened is that he received the message of she's mocking me, danger, danger, get out, get out, get out. But because he's so, you know, I mean, this is unsurprising with all I've known from him, of just, he's so good about dealing with these things, that he took a moment back, had a conversation with himself. I mean, actually or metaphorically, whatever, and then just talked it down, but still said, okay, just so you know, this provoked this negative thing about me, and probably wasn't expecting anything in return. He was just like, just so you know, this happened. Because, you know, at that time he was in a right state of mind, but if he were dealing with something deeper, maybe it would have hurt him even more. And I think that's the perfect way of reacting. You know, it's silly. If he had, you know, taking offense to that type of thing from is silly. It's, you know, it's silly because you didn't mean, you know, anything from it, and he knew it, and then so he recognized that. But as soon as he kind of de-dramatizes it, it's not silly anymore. It's okay, well, to each their own, and we've each got our sensitivities, and you've probably got yours, and, you know, he maybe has already crossed them, and or will do for sure. We've each got our silly little things, and you know, as long as you don't make a big deal from it, then, you know, it becomes a serious conversation of just, I mean, serious conversation, you know, not a serious conversation, but it becomes, okay, just so you know, this is a sensitive subject for me, you know, please be mindful of it. And
I think there's certain things.
No, please go.
No, I was going to say, I think there's certain things that also trigger us from past relationships, and there's certain insecurities that we have from our experiences with other people, that it sort of manifests itself in with another person, and it kind of who isn't the same as the other person who triggered you. I think for him, it sort of stirred up this feeling of being mocked or being belittled, or not being able to get what he wants or be what he wants, or, you know, because maybe someone else really actually wouldn't ever let him express himself in certain ways, or buy himself city slippers that he really wanted, or whatever it is. And I feel like a lot of times we also have to understand whether something's being triggered because the person you're with right now is not being okay with you, or is it because you still have remnants of trauma from another person that you were with, and then together you learn how to overcome this right now.
Yeah, completely. And, you know, we'll have, you know, I'm kind of hearing this conversation from another point of view of just, are we seriously talking about silly slippers?
But I had that moment too in the conversation.
But the thing
I just burst out laughing. I'm like, seriously, fish slippers?
Are we serious? But yes, we are, because the world today is so complex. You know, we're not just living in a world where things are black and white, and, you know, and it's the same thing every single day, and, you know, little things can change. And And the point, and you said it really well, it's not about fish slippers, it's about him feeling like he is mocked and feeling like he is being put in a cage of not being able to express himself. So today it's silly slippers, tomorrow it might be a big car or whatever, or you know, dressing a certain way or things like that. And so please.
You want? I was. It also represents an underlying pattern where, with certain people, maybe not with me, but like maybe with another person, it could have been, you know, this person is just always belittling me, always like mocking me for the things that I want or find funny or find amusing, or it's just like canceling me out for like, no, you're not gonna get that. I'm not allowing you to buy what you want. And it's sort of like this pattern where, yes, when you look at it and like as the thing is like, so it seems so silly and stupid, but when you look at the whole situation and the grand scheme of things, and you're noticing a pattern where someone's really doing it purposefully and with an intent to make you feel small or insignificant, or because they're just that kind of person, then you know it underlines a bigger issue. And I think it's important, why it's so important to not just like, oh, it's slippers, let's move on.
Because your reaction to that would have been very telling as well, of just, if he's coming to you completely, you know, calm and just, you know, just, by the way, I didn't really like this because of this. You reacted and, okay, I mean, let's talk about it and I'll be more mindful next time. That's one way of reacting. But if you had just said, oh, for fuck's sake, it's just slippers, then it's just completely belittling him, of just, you know, and it, you know, and you want to find the balance. It's happening once. If it was that all the time, then you could get to a point of just like, you need to get over the fucking slippers. But if it's just once and get the thing out of the way, then, you know, I have a counter example of a few years ago. My cousins, brothers, and I took my grandparents out for a meal, and I decided kind of that it was only going to be cousins. It wasn't going to be our plus ones. It was just going to be the five of us and our two grandparents out for a meal, because 7 is already a big enough group. If we had invited the plus ones, it would have become 10, and it's just not the same, you know, it's not the same event. And I'd said this clearly, like, we are not inviting the plus ones. I can't remember who was in a relationship or what, but that was just the way it was going to be. We're not inviting the plus ones. That's just final. We're just going to be the 7 of us, and that's it. And my cousin's boyfriend got in a whole hissy fit about it, of just, but I know your grandpa, because my cousin and her boyfriend used to not live far away from my grandparents, and so he had his own relationship with them and things like that. And he had this whole big thing of like, I'm taking it really personally and I'm really unhappy about it, and I have my relationship with them and I should come. And I was like, no, I mean, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, and I really want you to know that we count you as part of the family, but this is a cousin's thing with our grandparents, and we're going to pay for them, and it's our Christmas present to them. And you know, we all appreciate you and they love you and things like that, but it's not a thing about family or not family. It is just the 5 cousins and them. It has
nothing to do with him,
and that's
not
it.
Personal.
And he brought it, so we had the one conversation, that was that, and it was just like, I'm sorry you're feeling that way, but it's nothing against you, because he was taking it really personally, like he was uninvited type of thing. And we had the, you know, conversation of, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, I'm sorry for making you feel this way, but we're not changing the decision. It's nothing against you. It is, you know, it is just going to be at us 5. It never happens, you know, we can't all have our plus ones. It's just, that's just the way it's going to be. You know, 7 is a big enough group for them. If we're going to be 10 or 11, it's going to be too big, too noisy, and it's not going to be the same quality time. It is nothing against you. You're not invited. He brought it up like another 5 or 6 times after that.
Oh, get over it.
Exactly. And I think that's the, you know, the difference of like, you can bring it up and have feelings, and yes, it is, you know, it doesn't concern you, but you're allowed to have feelings about it, but get over it. And I think that's the whole thing of like, you're allowed to have feelings about these small events, but the world doesn't revolve all around you and your feelings, and you know, you want to
Yeah, take
balance
things
that
into
out.
proportion and learn how to let things go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
So this was
Thank you for sharing with us, by the way.
well, it was actually my pleasure. You, because
I think
you knew about
no,
it,
you just shared.
obviously.
Yeah, but I think it's very brave and very admirable to share something so personal in order to help other people learn from it, and to really just from the sense of that selfless sense of wanting to make an impact.
Yeah,
Other
exactly.
people.
I want to hear from, you know, one side or the other of just these big things, you know, are, you know, learning experiences, and you know, owning yourselves, and hopefully not having to get to that point.
Yeah.
Let us know what you thought. Did it help you? Did it trigger you? Because maybe we should put a trigger warning at the beginning of the episode.
Maybe we can do.
Yeah, I think I might edit back in of just like, you know, abortion topic coming up, because it is triggering for some people. You know, it took me a while to tell you about it, and then just being able to talk about it just, you know, freely and things like that. And I don't know about freely. I don't. Well, obviously, I've just put it on the internet, but it's yeah. You want to, you know, to each their own about this topic. And I think we may put a trigger warning at the beginning.
Yeah, we should.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.